For those of you who may be listening on Zoom, we are looking to contact and get the user furnished consultants.
Michael, can you hear us?
Yes, it is a bit quiet, but I can hear you.
Go ahead, Michael, if you can, we'll see if we can hear you talking.
Good evening, everyone. Can
You
you
hear us?
all hear me? Hi there, can you all hear me?
Everything's on.
So do you have it on?
We can hear you on our end.
Is it more maybe? Yeah.
Apologies, everyone. Where does that audio go?
The audio's on.
But it's on the county clerk board, not the board. of
Usually we
chambers.
don't just,
I don't know how we, yeah, mute the microphones right now. Ask her how to switch the audio. Mike's not at the moment until we figure it out.
she's not answering. I turned those off. Hi, Ashley. They say they can't hear us very well. That. Say that again. I could try. Okay. Okay. Let me see, turn this around.
Okay, Drew says we can be heard. You're loud and clear. I don't know what just happened though.
I'm turning all these back on. We had turned them off because we weren't sure what was happening. Okay, so everything's back on.
Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So we can't hear you. Maybe for the moment you can let us know in the chat box if you can hear us.
I can't hear my,
They can hear us.
my Zoom people aren't projecting into the room. Okay, thank you. We need to pause for 10 minutes.
Okay, we are going to take a 10-minute break while we resolve these technical difficulties. We will be back in session at 6 p.m.
Start.
Hmm.
Nothing, sorry.
I was gonna screen share again. Just find my,
I just can't hear the,
Yeah.
is she on there? Cause there was, it makes sense that the audio was coming through. Sorry, yes, yeah.
We had a whole.
I believe she said she had people coming over.
Somebody's coming over.
I'm gonna turn the mic. Mic, are you muted? Um, yeah, so it makes sense to me when they said that the,
Because usually they tell
Audio.
me that you don't have to click any of that audio.
No,
stuff,
you're
you just
right.
go.
and I think when it did that, it switched it over to the, whatever, the opposite one of what it's supposed to be. Yes, okay. Audio settings.
Her name's Grace, so say Gracie. I bet. My name's Dean. My wife is a boundary person. I'm like.
So we're trying to find,
Really good looking.
there has to be, it's like something that toggles between the boardroom and the other one. What's the other option? Chambers.
Yeah, maybe.
Something that toggles between the boardroom and the other one.
And he got his last year.
Did Ashley know? Did she know anything?
She's coming over.
Okay. Oh, she is.
Probably kind of hard for her to tell us what.
Yeah,
click.
there's something with, I don't know. Did Ashley know?
She's coming over. Probably kind of hard for her to tell us. what she was-
Okay, I'll give it, so.
Hmm.
First one is,
I was looking for the YouTube.
because right now,
You're on screen share, so they're gonna watch and. Yes.
Mhm.
They're just- Okay.
okay.
So that will be different. I want to something. Before. Earlier one.
Yeah, no, she's volunteers. No,
Somewhere where we have to choose between the audios, the.
yeah, they.
It's not in there.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot creating. Okay. So. Oh, okay, the email she sent you. Okay. Okay, sounds great. Yeah, but no feedback, you can pretty much. Her husband steps there.
I'm in the same
He's our
place, trying to
local,
fix it.
I can't find any.
It's gotta be through the Zoom,
Really good.
the Zoom,
I didn't know, I wasn't.
it's called, just like the platform.
Yeah. Yeah. Back when she was in. Startup. She was okay.
Hit those buttons,
No, she's great gal.
do mute.
How do they listen on public on Zoom? Do
Have
they
that
have their
little-
pictures?
Push a button.
Yeah, that little.
Show off and I do it.
Okay, you right there.
Or they just talk. Cause
Just talk right over everything. That works.
tell you everything.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, that
Drew, can you hear us?
I was already on Zoom meeting.
Hello?
On the Zoom.
His son?
Yeah.
He's got
See it
some
now.
good-looking boys.
This is our future planning commission.
Hear you all.
He keeps saying.
Everything sounds good now?
Everything sounds good if you can hear us.
Yep, I can hear you. Perfect. Thank you.
Welcome.
You all hear me?
Okay,
So
let
there's
me
one
make
button.
sure it's going
Yeah,
before I take off.
and that they can share a screen because they're gonna want to share a screen.
Share screen we're doing.
That works good.
All on now. Michael, you want to give it a shot again?
Yeah, we are reconvening the planning
Can you all hear
commission
me?
and continuing with item 1, a presentation by Minter Harnish. Michael, we'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. And is it, will we be sharing the presentation and screen sharing the presentation this evening?
I can.
I'm more than happy to do it. I just wanted to make sure I have the correct one pulled up. So I can go ahead and share that right now. Just give me one moment.
Works for the county. The CEO's office.
And can we all see the presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you this evening to not only update you on the general plan project, but to also get your feedback on some recent deliverables that we provided to you for review, those being the vision and guiding principles. So before we get into it, I wanted to just give a brief introduction to myself. I have been really kind of in the background of this project, really kind of working with staff, but not had a lot of forward-facing view to at least the board and yourselves. So my name is Michael Gibbons. I am a project manager for Minter Harnish, the firm that was selected to assist you all in this process. And I am the assistant project manager for the Trinity County General Plan update and the task lead for the development code update that will take place in task 7 of this project. Along with me this evening off camera is Nikki Zinchetta. She is a planner with our firm and has been integral in the development of many deliverables, those including your background report and your November workshop series summary report. So with that, here are kind of the agenda that I'm hoping to go through this evening. One is to provide you with an update on our process, where we are in the general plan update. The main meat of the discussion this evening is going to be on the countywide vision and vision statement and guiding principle options that we put together for you all. And then really open that up to commission discussion and receive direct feedback on modifications that you would like to see as part of this process. And then to wrap things up with a brief overview of what are the next steps are and what you can expect to as we move forward through this process. So I'll go through these briefly. So this is a graphic that we've kind of been showing from the outset of the project, and it shows all of our 9 phases. So the bubbles are those marked in green indicate phases that are either complete or currently in progress. Those bubbles marked in blue are phases that haven't started yet. And the special phase that we have marked in yellow, I'll get into that in a little bit. But I wanted to go over each of these phases briefly just to bring us up to speed. So we started the project in phase 1. That started with a kickoff meeting with county staff and a county tour that also involved a presentation to yourselves and the board and the publication of our website, the creation of a logo, and all the project branding. I'll skip phase 2 and I'll address that in a moment, but phase 3 was our existing conditions and trends phase. And that was when we pulled together the background report, which was a monumental effort and is a comprehensive snapshot of Trinity County over 20 at the outside of the project, so 2021 till now. A part of that process, we had a community open houses. We daylighted that information, and now we really find ourselves in both phases 4 and 5. So I'll touch briefly on phase 2. That is that phase marked in yellow. That was intended to be a technical zoning code update, in which we were going to work with staff to identify very specific sections within your zoning and your subdivision regulations, and make technical minor edits to conform with state housing law or various updates in state law. Through the project, it was determined, and through our initial community engagement, that there should be a larger emphasis on community plans. And hence why we have kind of this new phase 4. Part of that process and the decision to initiate community plans necessitated us to switch up the schedule. And so phase 2, which was supposed to be that technical update, ended up getting shifted to phase 7, which is actually a comprehensive update of the development of your zoning and subdivision regulations that will take place after the adoption of your general plan. So if we back up to phase 4, this community vision, that's where we are today. We've drafted some vision and guiding principles for you to review. And we have hosted already some workshops with the focus groups to get their initial feedback as well. We are also in the community plan stage, as I'm sure you are all aware. And this is that new kind of phase that we've added, where we are looking at incorporating community plans, updating existing ones, incorporating new ones into this overall general plan update process. That has been kind of happening in the background with the overall general plan update. And then task 6 is really our next step. After we hone in on this vision and guiding principles this evening and make a recommendation to the board and actually adopt these principles and statement, is when we can actually start preparing the general plan. Those statements, both the guiding principles, or the vision statement and the guiding principles, are really the fundamental fundamental in guiding the rest of the development of each of the elements of the general plan. Following adoption, phase 7, like I already had mentioned, is going to be a comprehensive update of your zoning regulations to address state law, necessary revisions based on your general plan, items that have collected staff for years. We'll really hone in on all of those, come up with a comprehensive matrix, and fix them and make it a streamlined, hopefully streamlined, more user-friendly document for the development community to use. And then next is phase 8, which is our EIR, CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, necessary stage for projects such as this. And then we're looking at hopefully final adoption of the general plan. It's phase 9. So here's just a brief overview of some dates that have been taking place and some milestones from 2022. So in June through August of 2022, we had a board meeting. We also met with initial focus groups. We had a community workshop that was widely successful. And then we attended the Trinity County Fair for the duration. In November of 2022, we held a series of, again, some we feel is wildly successful workshops in 10 communities throughout the county. And from there produced a summary report providing the feedback that we had received and really synthesizing that in a palatable way for you and the general public to review. In March of 2023 is when we released the background report for this project. That was a very monumental effort. The background report will be used to draft the project description for the environmental impact report as part of this process, and really sets the groundwork of or the foundation of where we move from as a county. And then in June through July, we had a second round of focus group meetings where we daylighted the draft vision and guiding principles. And we kicked off a community plan mapping online exercise. If you have all, not sure if you have all had a chance to take a look at that. That exercise is really exciting. We actually have received over 250 responses from that survey to date. That is actually set to close tomorrow. We have received a lot of great feedback. That mapping exercise, if you have not had a chance to take a look at it, allows individuals to select the community in which they live in. And then it asks a series of questions that are kind of focused around a map. One of the most important ones that we're trying to ask or solicit as part of this process is defining your community boundary. There are not community boundaries set for many of these communities. And so the first step to creating, before we can create guiding principles and visions for those specific communities, we first need to figure out what its jurisdictional kind of boundary is. And that is a very complex discussion, and is really one that should be led by the elected and appointed officials and the citizens. So we're very happy with the feedback we're receiving thus far. We will come back to you with additional feedback once we've had a chance to synthesize all that information at the close of that survey. So then this brings us to really the meat of this evening, and that is to discuss the countywide vision and guiding principles that have been developed so far. Briefly, I'll discuss what is a vision statement, and I'll start with kind of the vision statements that we've prepared, and then I'll move on to the guiding principles. So what is a vision statement, right? It is a statement that declares the ideal aspirations for a community to work towards. The vision statement should really be inspiration for decision makers in the community, and it should be comprehensive, long-term, visionary, and positive. The vision statement is essential because it really guides the development of the guiding principles. And the guiding principles then really guide the development of your goals, policies, and programs in your general plan. And so we need to start with this vision statement first, and then from there we can kind of build up from it. So why have a vision statement? Why go through this process? Well, it really allows us to capture the community direction for the future and reflect what community members value the most about their community and, of course, their home, their county. And as mentioned earlier, really does guide the goals, policies, and programs that will be developed as part of this process. We will look to that vision statement as the foundational piece moving forward. So you're probably wondering how we came up with these statements. I'll first just note that this vision statement was really purely created off of the feedback received to date from the various community workshops and feedback that we have received in comments and online. What we have done is we have taken the words that have been repeated the most, different themes that we have found to be common, and have drafted a multitude of vision statements for you to consider. Some of the feedback directly that we kind of pulled from was the first community workshop, the various focus group meetings that we facilitated, and the feedback that we received at both the community plan workshops and at the fair booth. These vision statements have been vetted by the focus groups. They met in June of 2023. And they reviewed and discussed this vision statements we're about to go over, in addition to the guiding principle concepts. Revisions were made to the vision and guiding principle concepts and then provided to the public for additional feedback, which is what we are looking at this evening. So there's a couple of options. I can read this verbatim to you all. I'm not sure if that is the best use of time, but this is option one for the vision statement.
Michael, I'm sorry. If I can just ask you to pause for a moment. We did have public comment. We can do it after we finish with this agenda item. It may take a while. Okay, all right, never mind. Please proceed.
Understood. Thank you. So here is our first concept for vision statement option number one. So within this statement, we see things and we see themes such as self-sustaining, creating a culture that is diverse and vibrant as far as an economy and a business base. And the statement really hits home that the county offers a welcoming place for people of all ages, incomes, and ethnicities to live, work, and visit. Here's option two, much shorter. This option is about preserving kind of the rural lifestyle that Trinity County provides, and maintaining and protecting all of its resources, while also providing an opportunity for places to, for people to live and work in kind of harmony with nature. And option three is another take on that same theme.
So Michael, would you like to have feedback now from the planning commissioners on which option they prefer and any suggested language changes?
That is definitely an option that we can move forward with. I think that would be a logical breakdown. If we would like to stop and transition to that, we are ready to take notes and receive feedback.
Okay, so commissioners, hopefully you spent some time looking at these, getting any kind of your preferences and any changes. So I'm just going to ask if you guys have a preference of option one, option two, or option three.
Option two.
Okay, we have
I
one.
think it's,
You like short?
well, I think people get lost when stuff is too long and they don't read it. So my idea is make it short and sweet and people will actually grab onto it. That's my 2
I
cents.
can agree with that. Because I was gonna say, I agree with that because I just went over myself. We came up with a vision statement for the church and stuff like that. And it's like short and sweet. So short and sweet to the point.
Commissioner Ellis, do you have a preference?
I think 2 and 3 are pretty similar. I just liked a couple of the words better in 3. Being safe and secure as opposed to valued and supported. I don't know why, but that's just the way I thought. Being the main difference pretty much in the statement, and then the housing and recreation part I liked a lot.
Commissioner Barrett?
I actually agree with Commissioner Ellis. I prefer option 3 for the same reasons he mentioned.
Okay, so I like option 1, but you guys.
Of course you do.
I like this more, yeah. But either option 2 or option 3 are fine with me. I had a suggestion, if we want to go with either of those options. I really took to heart Commissioner Heaton's statements last week And rather than say kind people or people are kind, I mean, I suggest that we would insert in either place in option 2, rather than kind people, I would put supportive neighbors. In option 3, where people are kind, I would put where neighbors support neighbors. Just because I have some neighbors that are not kind, they're cranky. They're a pain in the butt, but we support each other anyway. And that's what I heard at the community meetings was, it's a small community, so people just support each other, even though they don't agree and they're just, they're pissed off at each other, they still support each other. So for either one, whichever one you guys like, I would suggest putting either in option 2, instead of kind people, I would put supportive neighbors. And in option 3, I would put where neighbors support neighbors. What do you guys think about that?
I like it.
Okay.
I'm good with 3.
Good with 3?
Mhm.
Then my only other suggestion for 3 is I think play and recreation are a little redundant. So where the opportunities for work, housing, recreation, cultural, natural resources are abundant, it just seems like play is a little repetitive.
Agreed.
Yep, I could agree.
What do you guys think that's okay?
Sounds good to me.
So, Mr. Gibbons, does that give you some consensus then from the planning commissioners?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I may just briefly recap. So option 1, it seems like was just a bit too long. There are some concerns that it might get lost as you're reading through it. I agree. It is a longer statement, and I do support the idea of keeping it short and concise. For option 2, it sounds like there is general support of the themes. However, the distinction between kind people, there is the recommendation that we would instead replace that with supportive neighbors. And that same theme would also carry on into option 3, where we could have the ability to replace or insert where neighbors support neighbors, kind of going back to that theme that there is a strong sense of community. And you all support each other in times of need. So I think that we do have that captured. It sounds like maybe option 3 is where we're leaning as far as working from. Does that sound correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Wonderful.
I think that's what
That's your idea.
Until you pointed out the redundancy with play, I think play should be out of there too. I don't think it
and
needs
correct.
recreation's in there. So
Yeah.
recreation's a better word than play anyway.
Correct. Good call.
Okay.
It is.
And I won't explain why I liked 1. Okay. So that I think gives you some feedback then on the vision. And then do you want to move on to the guiding principles?
That would be wonderful. So shifting on to the discussion of the guiding principles now. Guiding principles differ a bit more from the principles or from your vision statement, of course, as they are kind of informed and based off of your vision statement. And they provide more specific guidance that will then be used to guide the development of your various goals, policies, and programs in your general plan elements. The principles are really central kind of themes that help articulate the county's commitment to achieving the vision statement selected. And they help to preserve and serve as a touchstone during the process to develop and refine the goals kind of in programs, as previously stated. So these guiding principles are presented on really the 6 topics that we are addressing as part of this general plan update, kind of these key topical areas if you've kind of stuck with us through this process, we really tried to continue this theme of these topical areas throughout this process. And so we do have some additional options for each of these 6 themes. So I'll preface by saying some of these topical areas, they range from kind of either 2 or 1 to 3 options. So you have some to pick from. There might be some where there's only 2, but of course wording can be modified in any of these as you see fit. So we'll start with hazards and safety. We have 2 guiding principles for you to pick from. Really, we're hoping to pick 1 guiding principle per topical area. So we'll have really kind of 6 core principles for this project. And this would be our first pass at a hazards and safety guiding principle.
So maybe we can take them one at a time.
Sure.
So on hazards and safety, do you guys have a preference for option 1 or option 2?
Mine's 1.
I'm okay. This time I'm going to say 2. And a couple questions. So the county is currently updating their hazard mitigation plan, and the Resource Conservation District just did a hazard mitigation survey. And so I'm curious whether or not you were able to see the results of that survey, because I think you'll see that natural hazards, like the wildland fires, are much more of a hazard than things like human caused hazards. At least that was my understanding of the survey results. So that's one of the reasons I was not in favor of option 1, because option 1 seems to prioritize human caused hazards, which are actually a lower risk in the county. I mean, we don't have air pollution and noise pollution and really water pollution. What we have are natural hazards like wildland fires, but this is it says as well as. So to me, it seemed like the higher risk things like wildland fires were given a lower shrift than the human caused hazards. Am I making any sense there?
No, that's exactly what I took on that.
Well, I agree, and I see what you're saying, but I'll just be honest with you. It was like when it says coordination with regional, state, and federal agencies, it was in the August complex fire. It was the federal government burned out more people than what the natural fire did. It was their backfires and everything else. And I was like, my personal opinion is like, the less federal and state agencies involved in my area, the happier I am. It's like, but that's just the outlaw of me that runs it. Cause it's like, honestly, it was like the garbage that they said about us and everything else. And it was like, I said, I really don't have much use for state or federal. Don't get me wrong. Our local group, I love them, but our district ranger sent them out of the area and brought in people who didn't care about us. And so it's like,
but this is for the future. So the Forest Service owns 76% of the county. So if you're trying to do preparation, then if you're trying to prepare to, reduce hazards and have a more safe, kind of place we live, you're going to have to coordinate with them to help them prioritize where they're doing projects and all that. So I agree, the August complex, we got screwed, but looking toward the future, I think, we want to provide safe communities through preparation that's going to have to involve coordination with state and federal agencies. I don't think there's a regional agency that's relevant to Trinity County that I can think of.
no.
It's state and federal. So anyway, that's why I was
And if I could, Madam Chair, I would
Yes.
just like to state one thing too. It actually says effective coordination. And really, I think that would be where we would be wanting to go.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can go along with that because I was gonna say the coordination they were doing before was not good.
No, it wasn't. So anyway, any other thoughts on?
I just wanted to make a comment on that. No, I was actually blown, and it takes a lot to impress me. I'm not gonna lie. So I have a front row seat where I built my house to the 2 fires that were started over in the last, month here in the basin. And I watched CAL FIRE and their aircraft and their crews work literally with binoculars. I watched the whole thing. I called in one fire. I actually saw it start, so I called it in. And but I watched it, and it was the most impressive. I mean, when they're on it, they are on it. And it was incredible. I was like, this is a well-oiled machine that coordinates well. And I would be happy to call them my employees any day of the week. I mean, they had 6 aircraft on 6 different levels, hand crews. It was amazing. It really was. I was super impressed. And so, hats off to CAL FIRE. I mean,
Well, same thing. I mean, we've had 2 fires up our way, Mule Fire and the Buckeye Fire, and Forest Service jumped on it.
Yeah.
I think they learned. I think they learned. And again, they have there's a lot of money right now available with the Inflation Reduction Act or whatever and all that. And so they have some huge fuel reduction projects planned for Trinity County. And so we need to be coordinating with them and saying, we want you to do a fuel reduction project around this community. And we want this project. This is our priority. And so that's why anyway, that's beating a dead horse, but I preferred option 2. So other thoughts?
I can actually go along with what you're saying. And it's like, I do agree what you're saying, but it's like, when you're dealing with those agencies, I just got a bad taste in my mouth, but it was like, but in reality, like you said, the noise and the air and the water pollution and stuff like that, that doesn't really affect us. And so I could go along with that, but I did want to voice my opinion that it's like, I'm not too fond of working with either of the agencies. So, but those for the options that have been given to us on that, I would probably have to say 2 is the best.
Commissioner Barrett?
I probably agree with Commissioner Heaton's disdain for government entities. And I think the best indicator of future performance is past practice. So I don't believe they'll do anything better than they have done for the last 20 years. But I can agree with option 2, but I think past practice is a clear indicator of how they're going to treat Trinity County.
Commissioner Ellis?
So the 2 points from 1 that I think would be good and 2 would be managing lands and wildfires. Just somehow being preparation doesn't really necessarily give any direction, and response to potential climate related natural and human caused disasters could be responsive to potential wildfires, natural and human caused, as opposed to, or something similar to that. Otherwise, I'm fine with 2.
Yeah, I actually had the same note that I liked option 2, but I was wondering if there wasn't a way to emphasize that the greatest hazard is wildland fires. So so maybe what I'm hearing is option 2, but perhaps with language that really emphasizes the need to somehow address that highest risk.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Please.
couldn't we just incorporate that sentence, manage lands to reduce the impacts of natural hazards such as wildfires, instead of in hazards planning, where it says, so state and federal agencies, how do I do this? education preparation, effective coordination with regional, state, and federal agencies managing lands to reduce the impacts of natural hazards such as wildfires and human-caused disasters.
May I say something?
Please.
And they also talks about, it's like the hazard planning that is responsive to potential climate related, natural and human disasters or whatever. It's like the climate related, it's like that's going down a really controversial issue. And it's like this summer has been the coolest summer that I've remembered in a long time. And it was like,
Yeah.
it was like, we could, in my opinion, we could scratch that climate related, because the truth of the matter is the weather is going to do what it's going to do. It goes through seasons, it goes through cycles. There's wet seasons, there's dry cycles, wet cycles. It's like, I don't see the point in going down. It's like, that's a big agenda that is being pushed down everybody's throats. And it's like, and there's documents supporting both things. And it was like, you know, I don't see the point in putting the climate related. That's my personal opinion. But
How about, so option 2, that says, that deletes, that is responsive to potential climate related natural and human caused disasters, and it says instead hazard planning that manages lands to reduce the impacts of natural hazards such as wildfires, flooding, and geological events. Essentially take the last part of option 1 and substitute that at the end of option 2.
that sounds better to me.
I think so.
I agree. I'm a firm believer that climate related change is adding to the wildland fire risk, but I don't want to get into a really controversial subject. So we'll potentially just talk
There's
about
a lot more dead trees.
seriously. But anyway, Mr. Gibbons, does that, are we making sense that we want to delete the section that is responsive to potential climate-related natural and human-caused disasters, and instead say hazard planning that manages lands to reduce the impacts of natural hazards such as wildland fires, flooding, and geological events? I don't know how you can manage lands to reduce the impacts of earthquakes.
Earthquakes?
Okay.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. There were 2 things that I wanted to touch on. So yeah, it sounds like we definitely need to move the wildland fires or wildfires at the front of the list. You feel that is the kind of the biggest threat and natural kind of hazard that you have. And then there was also a discussion on eliminating the word regional. Is that still something that you would support, being that you'd feel that there aren't really kind of any regional entities that you would be coordinating with?
Yeah, none that I know of. I coordinate with a lot of agencies, but I don't coordinate with any regional agencies. They're either state or federal. Even the state agencies, they may have a region, but it's not a regional agency. It's
redundant.
It's just a subdivision of the state agency. So yeah, I think regional is not necessary.
Okay, well then that's a great direction for the hazards and safety guiding principle.
And again, you might just want to check with the Resource Conservation District and get a copy of their hazard mitigation survey results.
Thank you. Yes, we will make contact with them and ensure that we get that. Not sure that we've had a chance to review those yet, so that would be very beneficial to help us inform us through this process.
Okay, the next guiding principle
is on community health and health services. In this case, we have 3 options to pick from. They kind of go from a longer to a more concise option, all with kind of their own spin. So
Okay, so commissioners, option 1, option 2, or option 3?
1.
I said 1.
Commissioner Heaton,
I could probably go with 1. Three's out of the question for me, but yeah. One will work.
Commissioner Barrett?
1 for me, please.
Okay, I agree. I liked 1. I hope that healthcare resources for seniors includes the fact that we don't have any assisted living facilities in the county. Yeah, okay. That was easy. Option 1.
Perfect. So this is our third, so kind of halfway through point is on land use, housing, and zoning. So this is a very important topic. And of course, trying to capture this into a single principle is difficult, but we have 2 options that we have, 2 concepts that we've come up with. So I'll hand it back to you for discussion.
Okay, door number 1 or door number 2?
1.
1.
1.
Sure, I put question mark.
I really see the need that we focus on expanding
Yeah,
future development.
I liked option 1, although I do have some questions and one suggested wording change on that. Commissioner Heaton?
1's good.
Good. Commissioner Barrett?
1, please.
So I guess my questions on that, I have 2. One is expand available land for future development. How, you're not talking about actually converting more federal land to private land? Or, are you talking about, how do you expand available land? Is
Work
it
with-
available private land?
Yes, so you could work with state and federal agencies to streamline the, with the forest lands into, trying to look for the words here, into residential land. So like SPI, they own a considerable amount of land, even in the basin and in Hayfork Basin, in all the basins, I believe. I think it's something like a 10-year process for them to convert that forest land
Right,
into
to
residential.
take it out of TPZ. Mhm.
Exactly. So, there's an area that we could work with SPI and large, forest land owners, make it, obviously agreeable to their bottom line and encourage them to move that land into a usable resource for our community. And also federal agencies to give us back some of our land that, that is in watersheds and areas like that, in basins that are already communities. BLM owns a huge swath of ground here in the Weaverville Basin that could be switched over to usable residential land. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, that doesn't include getting into our national forests.
Okay. So, I have some suggested language change where you say increase fire resiliency that includes shaded fuel breaks. Because I work a lot with the Trinity County Collaborative, the Fire Safe Council. I'm a fire department chief. And so that is a very narrow, singular method to increase fire resiliency. And it's, if you're doing fuel reduction, it could be shaded fuel breaks, it could be prescribed fire, it could be plantation thinning. There's all different kinds of fuel management projects other than shaded fuel breaks. So my suggested language there would be, instead of saying increase fire resiliency that includes shaded fuel breaks, I would say increase resiliency to wildfire through defensible space, home hardening and fuel management projects. And the reason for that is the insurance companies, they're not looking at, for housing, do you have a shaded fuel break? They're looking at, do you have defensible space? Do you have home hardening? And maybe adjacent Forest Service lands, are they doing fuel management projects? And those fuel management projects, like I said, could include a shaded fuel break or a prescribed fire or plantation thinning or, a number of mechanisms. So I think fire resiliency that includes shaded fuel breaks is just way too narrow. So anyway, that would be my personal suggested change for that phrase. What do you guys think? Is that okay?
I think it's great.
I like it.
So Michael, to repeat that, I would say increase resiliency to wildfire through defensible space, home hardening, and fuel management projects. I mean, right now we're looking at FEMA money to do some home hardening for low income people that would give them a break on their insurance company. I think insurance rates, I think all that fits into land use, housing and zoning, not just shaded fuel breaks.
Sure, understood. So there's that desire to make it a little bit more broad as opposed to calling out just one fuel management technique. So yeah, I think that there's a couple of options here. There's the addition of the defensible space and the home hardening. There is potentially another option not to be specific, and instead, as I'm reading this, potentially read build local wealth, increase fire resiliency through fuel management, and emphasize unified collaborative approaches to housing challenges as opposed to getting specific. That might be kind of another way to address maybe.
I think insurance companies would look at
Yeah,
that
but
differently.
right now, they're not looking at they're not saying, okay, Forest Service put in fuel management and that's it. They're saying, Mr. Homeowner, you need to have defensible space and you need to do home hardening. I mean, that's part of the kind of the CAL FIRE regulations or defensible space. Like I say, the insurance companies, the California FAIR Plan, effective August 23rd, is supposed to give rate breaks to people who have implemented defensible space and home hardening. So that's all part of this fire resiliency. It's not just, you have to do your part. It's not just the adjacent fuel management projects for, the lands next to you.
So then, in
I
that
like the
case,
idea of giving insurance companies, because they're going to look at this
Yeah.
and see what kind of community we are. And, everybody's running for the door in California when it comes to insurance companies because of the lack of things like this. So I think it is important that we put that message out there.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts?
We'll go ahead and add that to the end of that statement.
So I'm sorry, I don't think we want to call out the insurance companies, but I think we do want to talk about in housing that we want to improve our resiliency, of our homes. Like I said, through defensible space, home hardening and fuel management projects. Yeah, I'm getting the nod of approval here.
Yes, as I'm also taking notes. Yes, perfect. We can add that in there. Understood about the desire to be more specific, being that is kind of what is being required of homeowners at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you're being pretty specific before that, where you're talking about tiny homes and ADUs. I mean, there's other affordable housing options. It might be, I don't know, it might be our limited density rural dwelling ordinance. So there's other affordable housing options, but you've called out specifically tiny homes and ADUs.
Yeah,
So-
and the kind of, again, these are really designed from the words that really come up the most in our engagement pieces, and we do a kind of a search of those words that come up the most, and we did find these very specific kind of housing types, which is, I understand, it is very specific as opposed to being more general. And I think the addition of the defensible space, home hardening, and fuel management would be a good addition to this principle.
Okay, I think that gives you a consensus on land use, housing and zoning,
So the next,
mobility and infrastructure.
correct.
Okay, any preferences? Option 1, option 2, or option 3?
1.
1.
One.
I liked 1 because especially because it mentioned availability of communication infrastructures. I
Exactly.
think that's really important.
And fire protection services. So
Yes.
it is our biggest concern, is fire in keeping that at the forefront.
Commissioner Ellis?
Go with the 1. Sounds great.
Well, my opinion on that, I do agree with 1, but it's like, because you look at number 3 and they're talking about, oh, you got your safe bikeways and pedestrian trails and sidewalks. It's like, come on, really? And Ruth? It's not even reality. It was like, we ride our bikes, it's on the road. And it's like, that's just how it is. But no, one makes the most sense.
Okay, I think you have a consensus for option 1 for mobility and infrastructure. Watersheds and natural resources. Option 1, option 2, and option 3.
3.
3 also.
So the thing with option 3 is we don't have any state parks. There aren't any federal parks.
Well, I think forests, federal forests.
Yeah, I was going to say federal lands because,
Right.
not all forests. But
State and federal lands.
state and federal, we do have some state lands. There's the school parcel outside of Weaverville. Let me just say, I liked option 1, but I was going to add language to it, and you could add language to option 3. I really think it's important that the county actively participate in decisions regarding the Trinity River watershed. With all the controversy about minimum lake levels and flows down the river, and we're the county of origin for that water. And so if we're talking about a guiding principle for watersheds and natural resources, it should mention the Trinity River watershed.
It does say waterways.
But it doesn't really get across the fact that we need to control our own destiny when it comes to the watershed. We've let people take our water and make decisions on what to do with it, and just kind of passively sat there. And so I see the county stepping up more, talking about providing input to the Bureau of Reclamation and all that. So like I said, I just think we need to be more proactive. That, recreation and entertainment.
What's that to do with watersheds and natural resources?
Yeah, I mean, recreation opportunities, I don't know. I'm dealing with all the hikers that have gotten lost in the Trinity Alps, and I know they're not entertaining themselves. Right.
It's true.
I like your arguments. I think they're very valid.
So,
And I kind of like number one better than number three personally as well. Because one of the things that I do like here is while balancing the needs in communities in agriculture and healthy ecosystems. It was like, it's because in reality, we live where we live. And it was like, I don't live in Ruth because of recreation and entertainment. But that's sure a big plus of what I get to enjoy. But when you look at like the needs of the communities, and then it's like then the agricultural purposes and stuff like that. And I'm not even talking about cannabis, but it's like I'm talking about what it's like when you have people who are farming and everything else. It was like where they have the opportunity to grow whatever they want to grow. It was like I think that it was like we want to have a balance of things to where we do have a good healthy ecosystem involved in that. But that's kind of, I lean more towards one personally, but
Well, thank you. I mean, I just had a problem with the last sentence of 3, where it's recreation and entertainment. I didn't think entertainment was appropriate. I felt uncomfortable, even though I love the Alps. I'm hiking up there every week. Why single out Trinity Alps versus the Yola or, our other awesome wilderness areas or recreation areas? We don't have state or federal parks. We have state and federal lands. So that whole option 3 kind of turned me off. Commissioner Barrett, sorry.
I like option 1, please.
I'm fine with, I agree with you. I think 1 is right.
Okay.
I think you're all good. I'm good with 1.
I mean, here's Dawn with, the Trinity River. That's kind of like your backyard. I mean, that's really, but why wasn't it? It's just,
We want to call out Trinity River then instead of rivers, but that kind of limits it to just a river, and we have lots of rivers.
Yeah.
well. So if we went with option 1,
like it says rivers and forests.
Forests.
Okay, it's like I said, you got the Van Dusen, you got the Mad River over on our side as well. And it was like, it's not just about Weaverville and downriver area. It's like when it says rivers, we could capitalize rivers, and that's inclusive to all of them.
I think rivers is good, just as a blanket.
okay, so I think we're switching to option 1. What do you guys think about adding something about actively participating in decisions regarding the Trinity River watershed? Is that too specific?
It is the talking point.
Mr. Gibbon, do you understand? So is that appropriate to put in a guiding principle, like since we are the county of origin, since we have been pretty much ignored, regarding decisions on where our water goes and all that kind of stuff, is it appropriate to make a more forceful statement in a guiding principle that we want to have some say in how our resources get used?
Yeah, I think it's 100% an option for you. We've presented some options here where we have kind of honed in, as you've noted, Trinity Alps. So I do think that would be a reasonable request, being that it is, you are the origin for it. It does have an effect on kind of that rundown effect. So yes, I would say it's definitely open to making an addition to this option if that's desired.
Just because, I think it ties back into our economic development, like if there's no water in Trinity Lake, people don't come up and boat. If there's flooding going down the Trinity River, there goes the, salmon fishing season. If there's not a minimum flow, maybe there's not a rafting season. So it just having some say in how our water is managed. I just see that there's a broader benefits, not just protecting the natural resources, it's just really keyed into that part of our economy. Commissioner Barrett?
If I may, the problem with Trinity Lake, it was not created for recreation.
Right.
The purpose of that lake was to provide water to the Central Valley Water Project. The colossal failures, in my opinion, of the TRRP and the failure of the fish runs, they've had the worst recorded fish runs in 20 years since records began. A gentleman came in from the headwaters and did a report on it. And he said if their job was to damage the river, they couldn't have done a better job. So there's two issues there. One, we don't have a say in it because that lake is not created for recreation. While I agree with you, I own a boat, I love the lake. We're going to fail on that one. So, because you're going against all of the Central Valley Water Project, you're going against the federal government. The only incentive Trinity receive from that is discount power. And we still do receive discount power because of allowing that lake in our county. But I don't think you will gain any traction in talking to the federal government about what they're going to do with our water, considering that's the purpose of the lake.
Except that right now they are doing a reconsultation, the Bureau of Reclamation is, and part of the reason for that is that, for endangered species like the salmon, they have to release cold water. And so the Board of Supervisors has sent a letter to the Bureau of Reclamation requesting minimum lake levels to have that cold water available to protect those endangered fish. And so we do have an opportunity right now to amend the record of decision. They have to provide water to the valley, they get power, but they also are required by federal law to protect the fish. So if we can have a minimum level in the lake, the Board of Supervisors just sent that letter. So I'm thinking, again, they are in the mode right now of, and they're talking about hiring a water lawyer and all that kind of stuff. They're in the mode right now of, we need to step up and be more vociferous in what we want.
More vocal, sure.
Yeah.
I think, and again, this goes back to my issues with the government and the county, is they're going to receive a letter from Trinity County, and we're talking about a letter to the federal government. They're going to look at that letter and go, well, we'll look at it. We might address it in 50 years. So I think it's a wonderful idea and I'm all for it, but I think realistically, it's not going to go anywhere. I'm all for putting in that we should have more control over the water, but.
So how about this? How about if the Planning Commission make our recommendation to be option 1, and that we suggest that the Board of Supervisors consider whether or not they want to add language that allows us to be more vocal when it comes to decisions reflecting, regarding the Trinity River watershed.
I think that's good.
So can we do that, Mr. Gibbons?
Absolutely. Yep. I have
Okay.
noted here.
Rather than have specific language, just that as a talking point that we want them to consider.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so what we're planning on doing is really having this presentation very similar, circling the option and then listing out the various recommendations. And so we'll definitely add that as a line item for this particular principle.
Okay. So then the last guiding principle is economic development.
2.
And 2. Commissioner Ellis.
Let me give it a few more
Okay.
lookovers. I have 2 circled and 1. So
Commissioner Heaton.
I'm not sure yet either.
Commissioner Barrett.
I like one, it's short and to the point, and more importantly, the bottom line. Independent businesses are attracted to the area.
I like 3, mostly because of the last sentence, which we could move to option 1. Excellent schools and leadership programs that prepare youth as the next generation of our county's workforce. I really feel that it's so great when someone who grows up here goes off, gets educated, and comes back. And
Agree.
so, what do you guys think?
I'd be agreeable with that.
I could do that one too.
I do quite like in 3 there, provide a broad range of jobs across diverse industries, emphasizing small local businesses and startup. 3 does have some good qualities to it.
I agree with that, but also though, when it says that becoming a global, what is it, a role globally as a source of food.
Yeah, I
It's
didn't,
like,
that was kind of.
Really,
I
it's
don't
like
think
Trinity
so.
County, it's like, there's only 1 or 2 places I know that got decent soil in Trinity County, and at least in my neck of the woods of it. And it was like, we're not gonna be competing with the Central Valley for a global role there.
Yeah, I mean, look at the farmer's market. I mean, most of the, yeah.
Comes from Reading.
It comes from Reading. So, yeah, I liked option 3, but I was gonna say strengthen its role, forget globally, and say as a source of forest products instead of food. Just because, yeah, we don't grow enough food for ourselves, let alone to export.
I agree.
I like option 1. I mean, I could go along with that and I do like the excellent schools and leadership. If we added that to 1, I think that would be a good option.
Well, how about this? So I like Rory's suggestion. So, but not limiting it to expanded educational opportunities. If you started in option 3, where it says provide a broad range of jobs across diverse industries, emphasizing small local businesses and startups, excellent schools and leadership programs prepare youth as the next generation. If you just took that last section, starting with provide a broad range of jobs and moved that to option 1.
Yep. I like it.
I think
would be
that's great.
superior.
Yep, I think that's great.
Good call.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good for us.
That would be our suggestion.
Yeah, I agree that sounds a lot better.
And just one comment. So yeah, we want to have tourists, but I want tourists to turn into retirees that move here. I mean, for the North Lake, there's so many people that have a vacation home. They come up, weekends, or they come up 3 or 4 times a year, and then they retire and bring their money with them. So anyway, that was my only other thought. Okay, we'll turn it back to you, Mr. Gibbons.
Yeah, I also made note of the forest products as opposed to food, and kind of the elimination of the term globally as a suggestion as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what we export, just look at all the trucks that drive out of Trinity River Lumber, full of 2x4s and, boards.
Yeah, would.
That's what we're exporting. And in the future, it could be biomass, it could be chips for, biomass and all that kind of stuff, but food, no.
I agree.
Okay, well, that was really it as far as soliciting feedback for the vision statement and the guiding principles. The next step is we're going to take this feedback, we're going to synthesize it, modify these in kind of red lines and track changes for the board to look at and consider and document your points and kind of your thoughts on each of them to help kind of provide them a little bit more justification as to your changes. So I think we had initially set this up that we were going to read through them all and then have our discussion. We've already done that. So at this point, I'll maybe open it up if there's any questions before I move on to the next steps. Are there any questions before I move on?
I don't believe so.
So then the next step after this is, as I had mentioned, taking your feedback to the board. Ultimately, they will be the one to finalize the vision statement and the guiding principles. And then it's where we hit the ground running and start actually producing your general plan elements. When that vision and guiding principles will be solidified is still to be determined. We'll have to go back to the board, and that has not been scheduled at this time. But really the next step after that, it's also kind of happening in the background, is the finalization of these community plan boundaries. And so we are anticipating coming back to the board and to yourselves with the feedback received from your community members as to how they define their community. We will work with county staff and planning staff to hone in on a couple of options for you, and then really leave that up to the elected and appointed officials to hone in on those boundaries. And then after that, we are planning on having another round of community plan workshops in November, very similar to the style that we had done last November, which entailed 10 community workshops, 2 each night for an entire week. And then, of course, we're going to initiate the general plan policy document, and that is scheduled to take place starting this winter. So we are very excited with the feedback we've received thus far. We're excited to present that back to you from what we hear back on these various community engagement efforts and from the survey. We will be working with staff. So please, if there are any questions that arise in the meantime, please direct them to staff, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have as part of the process moving forward. And that will conclude at least my portion of the presentation. I'll hand it back to the chair.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this agenda item?
Melina Gibbons.
Hey, this is actually Marie. I don't know why it says it's Melina on my phone right now, but I just wanted to make a quick comment that I think it's really important for us to be inclusive of all of the rivers and wildernesses. If we're gonna list those things in any of these like guiding vision statements, it should be not just the North County. It should be really inclusive, and that's worrying that it might not be. So I just want to, if we're going to list the Trinity Alps, let's list the Yollabullies, the Chancelula. Let's talk about the Eel River. It's a beautiful wild river in Trinity County. Ruth Lake is also a great source of tourism and another water source. So if we could just try to be really inclusive and not North County centric, that would be great. Thank you.
I think that's why we chose option 1 and did not choose option 3. So option 1 is very general, and option 3, which we did not choose, is the one that lists out specific areas. Any other public comment? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. We appreciate your time and your rescheduling from last week. And so I think that closes that particular agenda item, and we will take a 10-minute break and come back for general public comment.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful evening.
Are there any vending machines here or?
Here? Mm-mm.
right, we're back on.
Okay, we are going to reconvene the Planning Commission meeting on August 10th. And we are moving to agenda item 2, which is a discussion on Planning Commission meeting schedule and set direction for staff. TC code 2.36 Planning Commission and resolution number PC 2023-03. So this is as a result, I asked the staff to place this agenda item on the agenda for the planning commissioners to have an opportunity to discuss our meeting schedule. So there is a memo. I'm going to briefly summarize it for those of you who might be on Zoom or listening later on YouTube. So brief background. The county code states that the planning commission shall hold at least one regular meeting each month and other meetings as may be necessary. The old bylaws for the planning commission stated that their regularly scheduled meetings shall be on the second and fourth Thursday of each month. So there were 2 meetings per month per the 1989 bylaws. But in March, the commission adopted new bylaws, which stated the commission shall meet regularly at least once each month. And then special meetings may be called pursuant to the provisions essentially of the Brown Act. So that's where we're at, which is the county code requires 1 regular meeting per month, and our bylaws state we'll meet regularly at least once a month. The issue that I see is that people got used to having us meet twice a month, which was appropriate when we had a lot of ordinances to consider or a lot of applications. But when we discussed the bylaws, we were essentially saying currently there's not that large of anticipated workload. So we thought we could handle things with 1 meeting per month. I would like to have us discuss and perhaps provide direction to staff to follow the bylaws that essentially we would have 1 regular meeting per month, and we can specify the date because right now the bylaws don't specify when that regular meeting would occur, and try to give guidance to staff regarding the difference in agenda items that would be handled at a regular meeting versus a special meeting. I'm proposing that regular meetings would be kind of routine things, you know, the variances, appeals, things, you know, things that the business of the planning commission should consider on a routine basis. And that we reserve the special meetings for things that might be time sensitive, something like a board of supervisor request or something that requires a lot more time, like an ordinance. And I'm suggesting this because I am concerned about, you know, the meetings that we've had canceled because agenda items haven't been ready. Special meetings, which only need a 24-hour notice versus regular meetings, which require a 72-hour notice. I think it would be beneficial to have the staff, and I say this in the memo, staff could focus their time on the components, staff report, public notices, minutes needed for a regular meeting once a month instead of the additional time required for a special meeting. The general public, especially applicants, will know that applications and responses must be submitted in a timely manner and should not assume that a special meeting would be called for routine items. With a more consistent schedule, hopefully the spate of canceled meetings due to agenda items not being ready will decrease. Given the current budget and time constraints. A once per month regular meeting will save tax dollars and staff time. And I anticipate a more effective, efficient running of the Planning Commission business. Lastly, I point out that there is an urgent need to process appeals, and that I will be requesting that the staff, council, and hopefully the new staff person work with the commission to develop a time frame to process appeals so that we don't have to have a lot of special meetings and so forth to address appeals. And I think it's not in the memo, but I do think that if we're going to consider adding the subdivision review committee and architectural review committee, again, we, as planning commissioners, we have a certain amount of dedicated time. And I think, that adds to our time if we're having regular meetings, special meetings, and then all the subcommittee meetings. Okay, so that's my proposal. And I would really love to hear what you guys think. Okay, so we will open it first to public comment. Do we have any public comment on Zoom? Tom?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission, Tom Belenko, Douglas City. Since you brought it up, Madam Chair, I think the urgency, if any, that I feel for the Planning Commission's schedule revolves around appeals. I think one way, albeit a controversial way, to address that might be if we bifurcate the appeals, because right now our appeals process kind of combines CEQA questions with, director's decision questions. And if we split those into two separate kinds of appeals, where a question of the director's decision, like you approve this, but it's really in a cannabis carve out, or something that isn't specific to CEQA, but is more specific to the decision, the ministerial decision the director is making, that can go the way we kind of handle appeals now. If we made the CEQA question, which we hope would involve a little more data and probably necessitates more time, when we say, okay, you looked at local biological resources, but did you consider this vole that might have been there that I don't see any documentation about, or something with real scientific data to consider? If we modeled our own procedures on the CEQA guidelines, here comes the controversy. In that, once the lead agency makes a decision, the licensee permittee can proceed. That decision is conditional on the outcome of an appeal, but the developer, as it were, is not holding up their project while CEQA is considered. Now, some developers will say, hey, while this is under appeal, I'm not going to do anything. I think in our case, with a lot of 10,000 square foot licenses, people would go ahead. That may seem unfair, but that allows us more time. If there are some issues that need to be considered, we can take, 60, 90 days to consider that without really jeopardizing making a one appeal fatal to the season. So anyway, that's my suggestion. Otherwise, I think one meeting a month with the opportunity for specials is the right course to go. I hope that we have streamlined the commissioner's time and necessity here So, and especially I think the two commissions we're talking about, or boards, whatever they're styled, that are the next two agenda items, I think hopefully will further streamline the workload of staff for commission meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have other public comment on Zoom?
I don't see any.
Okay, so I will bring it back to the commissioners for discussion. What do you think? Commissioner Barrett?
May. Mr. Blanco's points were very accurate about streamlining the process, and I'm glad you brought up the cancellations. It is hard for me to talk about scheduling meetings when we had 3 canceled, some of them in short notice and in succession. So I think we should definitely streamline the process for people coming before us. I think you made valid points, and I think Mr. Blanco made some excellent points, but I think we should really, really focus on not canceling meetings. So that would be my point. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Blanco. That's why I suggested that in the memo. I'm hoping with the new staff person coming on board, and with hopefully more staff time freed up, if we only have 1 regular meeting a month, that we can really address that appeals process. I used to work for a regulatory agency, and reviewing permits for agriculture, not cannabis. But I had a staff of biologists and engineers, and they would apply for a permit. We had 30 days to ask for additional information. And then once that information was provided, 90 days to issue the permit. And I was pretty hard on people that would try to extend that time frame by at the last minute asking for some more information on some niggly little thing. Our board met once a month to issue the permits, and the staff knew that, and the applicants knew that there was timeframes, for posting, for public notice, for the whole bit. And so I would really like to, I sympathize with our lack of staff, but I would really like to just try to get in a groove of, we're going to meet once a month and we're going to crank through all these routine things that staff's been putting on the agenda and really try to move stuff forward for the applicants. And like I said, I agree, we need to fix this appeals process. And I'm hoping that we can do that.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I'm in agreement with all your guys' talking points, and I really am strongly agreeing with, if we are going to have a special meeting, that is a special meeting to do with something other than general business, that is, the house is on fire, we have to meet. Not, oh, we just got to get this through because somebody's yelling and screaming. It just feels very reactionary and not put together. So yeah, great points, and I am fully behind it.
I agree already. It's perfectly fine with me.
Commissioner Heaton, what do you think?
I like the idea of the fewer meetings, the better. It's like, granted, I won't get all that money for my travels and my time and stuff like that, because I'm just raking it in over all that kind of stuff. But I believe though is if I remember right, some of our cancellations and stuff like that was due to technical difficulties, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I got to be honest with you. Yeah. And so it's like, I got to be honest with you. It's like, I can't fault staff for that, because it's like, I hate technology. And it was like, and my brother's worse at it than hates it more than me. And it was like, so, but the thing is, it's like, but I do like the idea that it was like 1 meeting a month or whatever. It's like, Because honestly, it's like I have a pretty busy schedule, but I also signed up for this thing. And it's like, and I'll do what needs to be done, but I do like the idea of once a month versus 2 times a month, but I can do whatever, doesn't matter.
Okay, so I'm thinking that we have essentially a direction to staff to do your best to have routine items on a regular meeting the second Thursday of the month. And if needed, special meetings on the fourth Thursday of the month for things that aren't routine. Does that?
Works for me.
Absolutely. No question.
Okay.
Beautiful.
We'll give it a try. And like I say, we can always change it. You know, the bylaws just pretty much say meet regularly once a month, special meetings, you know, can be called. So but hopefully that will help the staff schedule their time. And hopefully the applicants will then realize if they didn't submit something on time, when staff told them they needed to have it by a certain date, that means it's not a 2-week wait, it's a month wait.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, that closes agenda item 2, and we will move to agenda item 3, discussion. Reestablish the subdivision review committee. Trinity County Code 16.10 subdivision review committee. Mr. Presley?
Evening, ma'am, commissioners. So there has been a need for this committee to be reestablished for a little while now, and I think it would definitely streamline the approval of, the subdivision applications that we get. I think it would help us. I think it would help staff just have a clearer direction at the beginning of what's needed, and then probably curtail a lot of some of the back and the forth that we get, during the process. I think could be curtailed just by having this subdivision review committee actually look at the applications before it ever even, gets off the ground, so that the applicant can actually have all this information up front instead of, once again, with reduced staff, it's piecemeal sometimes, and they're just trying to figure it out. So my recommendation was to bring this before you and to have the planning commission assign a planning commissioner to this. And then as part of 1610.010, it'll be the planning director, the public works director, the health officer, a representative from the Fire Chiefs Association, and a planning commissioner. And the planning commissioner will run it, and I will be the secretary. And whenever we get a subdivision application, then it'll be reviewed by the committee, and they will make recommendations to the planning commission.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this agenda item?
Not seeing anything.
Okay, so I believe then we'll bring it back to the planning commission for,
Tom's just popped up.
okay.
Must be some delay in the.
All right, Mr. Belanco, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Sorry, I'm a little slow on the draw here. First, thank you for putting this on the agenda. I 100% agree with what the director said about reestablishing it. This is one of those muscles in county code we've allowed to atrophy, probably because we didn't really need it. Before it gets to the appendix level, I think reviving it really will help streamline some of, while we're not the kind of county that has tons of subdivision applications, when we do have a subdivision, that means some developer somewhere is really committing substantial amount of time, energy, resources, money into a subdivision. And it behooves us to have this process to streamline it. And I think, like the director said, we probably had 4 or 5 subdivision questions come before the commission, each one accompanied by a staff report. I think we'd actually reduce the burden on staff while increasing the burden on one commissioner anyway to have to attend these meetings. But I do think we can get out in front of some of these problems instead of being reactive, because reactive, it puts a lot of pressure on the commission to make decisions that are not quite spur of the moment, but are at the end of the line. It puts a lot of pressure on staff, whereas the more dialogue we have, I think the better outcomes we're going to find. So very much in favor of this. Thank you for considering it. And I look forward to seeing it in action. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comment?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission. So I'm going to assume we're all in favor of reestablishing the subdivision review committee. Yes. So do we have any volunteers to be the planning commissioner serving on that committee?
I have a question for staff.
Please.
So when you said when a subdivision comes up, there would be a review committee, is that going to be just an open-ended thing? So as things come up, then we schedule a meeting, or is that going to be a monthly thing, quarterly thing? How does that work?
You know, I really believe that it's at the direction of whichever planning commissioner gets assigned. How many we have in the works right now, there's probably a couple that actually could warrant meetings and, getting together and talking about it, just to kind of curtail any kind of issues that may be coming. We are a young group right now, and we are learning as we go through this stuff. So, I mean, essentially, it would be everybody coming together and doing this as one, but it could be monthly, quarterly, or it could be as needed as well.
Thank you.
Do you have any other technical or clarifying questions for the staff? Okay, so I'm back to asking if any of the commissioners would be interested in being appointed to this committee. Okay, do we have any nominations?
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Rory. I would be willing.
So Commissioner Sharp would be willing to be drafted to serve, correct?
I do live here in Bakerville, so it kind of does make it easier on all you folks.
So
I honestly think Bill would be really good at it with all of the knowledge that he has. Actually, that was not saying that I wouldn't be willing, but it's like, man, that's another long drive for me. But it was like, but the truth of the matter is, it's like when we've come to the other subdivision things that we've had, Bill's asked some amazing questions that I've never thought of, just because of his knowledge into the building process and everything that he's done. So that was actually my recommendation too.
Thanks, buddy.
It sounds like Bill's the man for the job. Know where to start.
yeah. Okay, so
Bill's the one for the job too.
so what I'm hearing is that my fellow commissioners would like to appoint Commissioner Sharp as the member of the subdivision review committee, the chair.
I accept.
Okay. And so the couple points. So the other members of the subdivision review committee are the planning director, Director Presley, Public Works Director, Health Officer, Planning Commissioner. So I'm assuming that you all can get together then and figure out your workload and your schedule. Right?
I have
Madam
one
Chair, if I may.
question.
Oh, go
Commissioner
ahead.
Sharp? Oh,
Are you going to be the Trinity County Fire Chief Association representative?
I was gonna ask for information about that next.
Oh.
Commissioner Sharp?
I nominate Commissioner Fall to be county. No, I'm seriously, I did have a serious question. I'm sorry. For Mr. Presley, when do you anticipate meeting?
I think for the first few months, it would behoove us as a new group to probably meet once a month, just to kind of get our guidelines and what are we really going to, what we're going to really do, how we're going to look at it, the procedures. I think the DOT director is going to have a lot of feedback and information on this. So I think, in my personal opinion, if I was chair, I would make it once a month for the first 2 or 3 months.
Starting this month?
No, I would start next month because I would like to have a full committee.
So when we fill all the holes, then.
Right. And really, it's only, the only one that's even in question will be the representative from the Fire Chief Association. So once we get someone from there, I think we can just meet.
Okay, so, and just staying on that thread, times, what would we be looking like, date? I would prefer, honestly, regular business hour meetings, not night meetings. I do have flexibility in my schedule to do that. I'm assuming most of these other folks do as well, being they're county employees. And I'm hoping that helps you guys as well.
It actually would, sir. And you know what? I don't want to be too crazy about this because it is a new committee being established, but the subdivision review committee and the architectural review committee for Weaverville, they could actually kind of 1 hour at that meeting and 1 hour at the next meeting. And so it could piggyback off of it if that's what you want.
I would say when necessary. The architectural review committee, I think, is a quarterly thing at best for Weaverville. But I'm willing to go quarterly for now. I did put out an email today. I just have not had time since the last meeting to really connect with anybody, but I did put out an email just kind of trying to get some thoughts and ideas of times. But I think quarterly for that is going to be more than enough. And we may even do biannual, depending on the load. We just don't have a lot of stuff come before the architectural review committee, even though it hasn't been established. There's only, since we've been doing it, we've only had 2 instances where it's needed to be called. So.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to throw that out.
No, I think it's a great idea.
This is definitely something I would say for the first couple of months, first 3 months.
Till we get rolling, yeah.
Yep.
No, I think it's great. So maybe we can talk later, via emails and once you fill these holes about a day and time.
Okay.
Perfect. Madam Chair.
So the 5th member of our subdivision review committee is a representative from the Trinity County Fire Chiefs Association as appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So I am a member of the Trinity County Fire Chiefs Association, and I'm willing to work with Director Presley to put it on their agenda to have them appoint someone. They meet the second Monday of the month, so their next meeting is next Monday. And so potentially I could ask our secretary treasurer to put that on the agenda if you thought that you would be able to Zoom in or.
Yeah, of course. I would just come down there and because I haven't seen the guys in a year and a half now. So
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Personally, I think it's better to have a broader membership of the subdivision review committee. So to have another fire chief who's not wearing their hat as a planning commissioner and has to change hats might be wise. I appreciated the suggestion from Director Presley that we may want to have someone from CAL FIRE or someone who's more familiar with the regulations regarding subdivisions in high fire hazard zones.
You're absolutely right,
Um,
because they have a lion's share of. Yep. I think you're absolutely right, Madam Chair, because they do have a lion's share of input when it comes to subdivision reviews, roads, all of that.
Yeah, the whole setting up the new
Yep.
regulations for evacuation routes
Yep.
and all that. So, I can't speak for the Fire Chiefs Association, but that would be my suggestion to them, is that they consider someone who's really looking at the whole picture of what a subdivision is, not someone who's strictly looking at building codes or fire marshal codes or something like that, which is what the fire chiefs tend to zoom in on.
Mhm.
So anyway, I can help try to put that on the agenda and get a representative, and then we would need to take that nominee to the Board of Supervisors for their confirmation before we would actually have a full committee. So I will check with Nick Chaponi from CAL FIRE, who is our secretary, and see if we can be on the agenda for Monday.
Yep. Sorry, ma'am. I was just looking at the board agenda. I was trying to figure out which board meeting, if we got them on the 14th at the fire chief meeting, really, we would have to wait till the 6th of September to have them confirmed by the board. But at least that gives us some timeline of how to go forward with this.
Okay. Does that
Sounds
sound
good.
like a plan?
It does.
Is that okay with?
Beautiful. Great.
Okay, so we will move forward on our subdivision review committee. And that closes agenda item 3, and we are going to move to agenda item 4, which is a discussion on architectural review committee purpose, establishment, and areas of application. Trinity County Code 17.29C.050, architectural review and preservation special treatment. Director Presley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So the architectural review committees, there's 3 of them in the county. There's one for Helena area, there's one for Weaverville, and there's one for Lewiston. So when we get projects that could be scrutinized in the historic area because we want it to meet certain requirements, then we call upon the architectural review committees to kind of look at it, see if it meets their criteria. All the criteria is in County Code 17.29C, and everything is just laid out there. I wasn't really going to read it to everyone. Everyone's capable of that. But we're going to be, I did reach out to Supervisor Litweiler, and he is going to be trying to give a rebirth to the Lewiston one. So we've got the Weaverville one going. We have the Lewiston that's going to be stood up. But really what the purpose of this is to kind of, I think just like the subdivision review committee, we want to get these things going again so we're functioning on all 8 cylinders. So I think part of that is kind of really just bringing it up at this meeting, stating that this is something that's very important and it may be overlooked at times, but I'll just give like an example, just a hypothetical example. Somebody wants to update the siding on a building that they might have. And if it's in the historical area, then it has to go to the architectural review committee. And if it's not just part of a normal maintenance and upkeep, it literally has to be, they have to have an application, has to be brought before the architectural review committee. They have to look at it, vote on it, decide if it meets their criteria before that can actually move forward. So you might think, well, this is just an easy thing. It's no big deal. But sometimes there's time constraints for different people. Insurance purposes might come up. Dilapidated buildings where we need somebody to come out and do something. So we need action, sooner as opposed to later. Fire season is upon us, and nobody likes to think about fire season, but I'm here to tell you the poison oak is turning colors now. So my eyes and ears are perking up. So it's just these things in consideration that I think a lot of things do happen in Weaverville. A lot of things do happen in Lewiston. And so it would just behoove us to have both of these kind of solid. And really the original reason was because I wanted to reestablish the meeting schedule and just, if it needs to be, the first week in January, the first week in April, the first week in July, just so that I'm not missing anything and I have it on my calendar so that, we can just coordinate these things so they're not missed. Because what I find is, when you have meetings with these people that are very, very knowledgeable, when they come out of the woodwork, a 15-minute discussion turns into 2 hours. And then you come out of the meeting with a whole bunch of stuff that nobody had really thought about before and how to make things better. And so I think that really should be the reason why we're here, is to try to make things better. So that's kind of my spiel for this week.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, so back to the Planning Commission. So somebody's logging in. Trying to connect, but maybe we can go ahead, and if he raises his hand, I'll let you know. Okay. So I will just say, just right off the bat, I will volunteer to be the Planning Commission member for Lewiston because that is District 1. So that's easy.
You would be.
Okay, so do we need to designate a planning commissioner for Weaverville?
I'm already it.
Okay, so that's easy too.
It is. And so essentially it's just the schedule.
Yeah. So as far as Weaverville goes, I think how we talked, for now, I like the idea of setting a date and a time. And then as chair, I can weigh in when those times come, maybe at least 2 weeks prior. So if we have to notice it, we can, to whether we have anything on the agenda, and if we don't, we can just not have the meeting and, cancel the meeting. But if we set it quarterly, I think for now that would be good. And then just pick, maybe we could communicate at a later time. Once I would really like some feedback from the current members on the Architectural Review Committee before we set those dates and times, just to make sure, because they are good folks, but they're business folks. And I want to hear their input as far as what works for them for times. But once I hear back from them, I would like to get with you and set that, in writing, and then that we just make that a regular thing. It's on the agenda. And like I said, if we don't have anything to meet on, we'll just communicate a few weeks ahead of time and nope, there's nothing to do and we'll move on.
Got it. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.
Any other thoughts from other commissioners? Okay. So do you have everything you need on that then, Mr.
Yes.
Presley?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so that closes agenda item 4. And we will move on to planning commissioner reports. Do we have any planning commissioner reports?
Sure.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes. So I got an email from, I'm not sure if I can use names, so I probably can because it was on my county email, but I won't. So I got an email from a constituent in Hinshaw. The Hinshaw community as a whole, at least it would appear that way, has submitted paperwork for an opt-out. The email came to me a few weeks ago when the system was down, and I just saw it last week when it came back up, and I responded to him, "Hey, have you had any traction on this?" Because that was their question. Can you help us? And so I responded, "Have you gotten any traction on this?" They responded, "No, we haven't. We haven't heard from our supervisor. We haven't heard from planning. You're the only one that has responded to our emails. And I have, and I'll share this with you guys. I have what she sent me, which was their opt-out signatures, maps of their opt-out, and a lot of signatures on this. If you could just pass that down as you go. So my question, I told the constituent that I would bring it up here tonight at the Planning Commission and see what that process looks like. If you could, and the name's on there, and I'll give it to you, Ed, afterwards.
Yeah.
What that process looks like, how much attention does it get? There's a feeling from these folks that there's more attention given to processing licenses than there is to people wanting their voices to be heard as not wanting to be in an area where cannabis is produced. So I just want to bring that up, make sure that these folks are getting proper equity in that process. And honestly, that somebody responds to their emails. And again, it's not even in my district. It just got emailed to me. So, and I am also, I believe it's in Commissioner Heaton's district. I will forward you that email from her.
Okay,
and so you're in the loop on this, and maybe you can communicate with them as well.
Who knows? She probably emailed me as well, but it's like I said, I haven't been able to contact with IT to get reconnected with my email address.
Sure. So, Mr. Plessy, could you explain to us how that works, the whole opt-out process? Do you know?
Mhm. Yes, I do, sir.
Thank you.
So there is no process. So my recommendation for anyone that has a petition signed and has followed what other people have done is literally to bring that to the Planning Commission and have it heard. And then the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. And then the Board of Supervisors will hear it, because there is not and this is part of the cannabis ordinance rewrite. So because there is no process for it, it's called a grassroots process, which basically means it's on basically the petitioner to get all the signatures and then bring it to the commission for action, recommendation to the board. And then and it probably wouldn't even have to come to the Planning Commission if they just wanted to take it to the board, because there actually is no process for this. So this is being written into the cannabis ordinance update, because there has to be a mechanism to opt in, to opt out, just so it is fair and equitable, because it may appear that way for this specific place. Because when I looked at, because I did see the email, and when I did my research on it, that's when I determined that there had never been a process put in place on how to do any of it. And so that's why we put it into the cannabis ordinance update, because there has to be the process. So in lieu of waiting till the cannabis ordinance gets finished, and I guess I should be talking to Commissioner Heaton, and sorry, I was just talking. But instead of waiting for the process to be completed, they could just bring that to the Planning Commission. They could email Commissioner Fall, email myself, ask to get on the agenda, and then we could bring that to the commission to be heard.
Okay.
So just to be clear, that is what I told them we would do. So that was my response, that I would bring it and agendize it tonight. So
that's perfect.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Todd? And I don't want to step
Absolutely
into your neck of the woods.
You know what? I'm good. I'm good.
Are we going to have a special meeting for this item?
Absolutely.
This is a regular agenda item. So how do we do this? And do you want to make that motion?
Do I want to make that motion? I could make that a motion, but when do we want to, would that make, how about I make a motion that, the
So
next,
this, can we do motions under reports as an action item, or do we just want to have Commissioner Heaton contact them and have them?
I think that would probably be best.
Okay.
Have them
Yeah.
contact
so I'll call Sue
department.
and have her contact Ed.
Agendized, and then once I get that confirmation, they want to agendize it, then we can agendize it.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
thank you, sir.
His email link is, as well as
I'm
mine, is
Give,
on
give
the
that to
Trinity
Todd.
County website, first page.
Okay. Thank you.
And I will forward you her stuff to your email that you can look at.
Beautiful. And one thing I did want to say, I think Miss Carol was the one, it was when Skylar was here, she asked me one time, she says, Todd, she goes, I hear it called Hetton Valley or Shaw Valley. And this is one thing, because people will mock you a little bit. It's actually Shaw or Hetton Valley. Shaw is actually the Indian word for valley. And so if you call it Shaw Valley, you're saying Hetton Valley.
I just said Henshaw.
Yeah, I know you did. I know you did, but I believe Miss Carol called it Shaw Valley.
I did.
And so, but so it's like, no, I'm saying that so if you happen to say it, if you say it to the certain people, there are certain people who will correct you and mock you a little bit or whatever over that. But that's why I just wanted to let that be known, that it was like it's either Shaw or Hetton Valley or whatever. Because if you say Shaw Valley, it's technically,
Redundant.
yeah, it's not correct.
Well, and I did want to point out, I was saying that I have been there. I used to go there every spring for the wildflower blooms. It's beautiful.
It is.
And so I stand corrected. I don't want to be mocked when I go down there and admire their beautiful valley. Okay. Any other planning commissioner reports?
I'm good.
No? Okay. We will move on to planning director's report.
So we did a couple of interviews, and we interviewed for a senior planner position, and the individual was offered the position and he declined. So we are moving to the second person on the list, and we're hoping to have a second interview with that individual next Wednesday.
And that is the associate planner.
Associate planner. And HR told me today that there's been 2 more applications received. So hopefully I can get information on them as well. So
2 more associate planner applications?
she didn't tell me which level.
Oh.
She just said that she had gotten them, but she hadn't actually looked at the MQs for them yet to know where they fell. But really, that's it. I mean, we just had a meeting last week, so I didn't have much between this week and this
It's only,
well, with everything that had already been talked about, it was a lot. So, but that's where we're at.
okay, that's still promising. Any other things to report? No? Any questions for the planning director?
I have one question. Is for Director Presley. It's like, when are they going to scratch that interim off that deal there? When is this going to be official? Because they got my vote. I'll vote for
We
you.
could do it right now.
I agree.
I do not know, sir.
Okay. I was just curious.
Talk to your supervisor. I don't know.
You are.
Thanks, sir.
Yep.
Okay, then I think that's the end of the planning director's report, and we will adjourn our meeting at 8:28.
I
Okay,
can't see
thank
that.
you.